First, you are going to design it. Okay, you put the graphics and the text and everything. Second, you are going to animate it. And then you are going to sequence the layers, exactly like we have done before. But now we have more layers here. That's one. And we're going to create more interesting animation. Like you see the Tanzania here, how it's coming up, the rectangle, the background, top news and stories like this. But also it will give you the courage now to start animating more layers. Sometimes here you will have 50, 60 layers, guys. So this is a full project in 3 steps. The design, if you remember, there is no animation here at all. Then there is the animate, where you just animate, it comes in. Look, it looks impressive a bit. Okay, you have all the keyframes. Then you move to sequence, where you sequence your layers, and you have a full project just over here. Now I'm gonna go a bit fast, because otherwise the design will take like 20 minutes me talking to you. So please try to follow along, or try to listen to the lecture, then apply later on. There are so many ways for you to listen and apply at the same time. So let's start our new project. But before, let's do some house cleaning. Notice that the project panel can really start getting very messy very soon. That's because we start creating compositions, bringing in images and videos that we might or might not use. You know, it's not 100%. So getting a mess here and not knowing what's happening is very easy. The best way is from the start of the project, you start, organizing. To organize, the first way is to start creating folders. You notice here, you have create a new folder. Let's try it. We click and a new folder has been created and it's prompting you to write a name. Let's write here company. And then we can press return and here you are, it's sorted alphabetically. Now I'll select the 2 files and can create a lasso. Click on one of them and drag them and drop them inside the folder. So it's starting very nicely. Now we want to do another project that has to do with a flood. It's like a news flash. Let's start by creating the folder just now. So we'll click on a new folder and let's call it flood. And then we need to import a video and create a composition. Well, if you deselect and right click, it's gonna import it just over here, then you have to move them. But there is a better way. If you select the folder itself and press Ctrl I or Command I on the Mac, this is for the import if you remember, then you can select your video, that's the video. And if you are in 2018, you can start creating the composition because this video is 1280 by 720. If you click import, look how neat it has become. The composition and the video have been already placed inside the folder. It's pretty nice to start like this. Fine, so we are ready to start here. Of course, you lock the video so it doesn't move around. I'm going to remove the sound. You see, this is sound off, this is sound on. And we start now laying out our project. Now I have created a new workspace, text 2, where I have the character panel, the paragraph panel, and the align panel visible. This is especially for the course, so I don't disturb you moving around. But it's quite nice. You can create this workspace and save it for you. You know how to create workspaces. It's explained in the beginning of the course. So let's start adding the text and the shapes and the backgrounds that we need. So we'll go for the text tool and we notice we're cool here. Maybe this is too small, right? This is fine. We click over here and we start writing. We want to write forests flooded by heavy rain. So I will type. You notice that the paragraph is centered. So I will go for the selection tool and move it just over here. Place the text exactly where I want as a lower third. Fine, let's add more text. But now you know you can use Ctrl T. Here you are. And you can click to add the other text, which is damage estimated at $20 million. For example, you can write whatever you like. I press Ctrl Enter. The font is too big, so I'm going to reduce it to 30 because this is subtitle. Go for the selection tool. You could press V and align this tool nicely the way you would like. You know, make the spacing in between. Usually that's how it appears on the TV. Now this text needs a background. Let's go for the rectangle. You can just press Q and start drawing the rectangle. Notice I'm gonna start drawing from the outside to the inside. We have transparency here. If I want to adjust it, I press space bar. Okay, that will be cool like this. Then I need to adjust it under the layers. Okay, the text layers. Then I'm gonna give it some roundness on this side. That's why I put these corners out. So I will go to rectangle path 1 and the roundness here. Let's say 25 will do nicely. We click out, not bad. So this is done. Let's go on top here. So we have the place and the time. Usually this is how news go. So I will go for the text tool, Control T, click and type, for example, Tanzania. Then go for the selection tool, move it wherever I like. I need to create the background now. So I press Q for the rectangle. You notice how it highlighted. Then I will click and drag and adjust it exactly what I want. Here you are. Not bad. Of course, in the timeline, I need to put it under the words. Good. But now I need to duplicate exactly the same here on this side for the date. So the best way is to select these two layers. Notice if you select the bottom layer first, you have no way to select the top layer. So the best way is to select the top layer first and then press shift, select the bottom layer. Now notice here in the timeline what I'm gonna do. I will duplicate this layer because I want them identical. So you come in your timeline here, you select the layers. So I will select shape layer 2 and Tanzania, press Ctrl D and they are duplicated. But it duplicated the text on top of the text and the shape on top of the shape. This is not practical. So you need to move them. So you click and just take them, for example, under Tanzania 2. Here you are. Now you have 2 of them and then 2 of them. Cool. Let's select these 2, click on the anchor point and just press shift and move them to this side, making sure somehow they are aligned on the border. So now I will select Tanzania 2, double click if I like from here and write August 2045. I'm a bit cool with that. Let's align this in the center because the text is different. So I will align them to the selection here and position them nicely. Now I want to add the top news over here. Press Q to select this shape layer. Notice that if I long click, Q will cycle. That's what's happening here. Press another Q, go to rounded, another Q will go to ellipse, and so on. So make sure that you are pressing on the right Q. So I'll click and drag to create a square. Fine. And try to position it just under August 245. Here you are. Fine. Now I'll need to add the text. Go for the text tool or Control T. Click here. Top. Enter news. It is centered. That's very fine. And then let's put it in the middle. Select the second one. And, align them very nicely the way we would like. So now we have finished our design here and we're ready to animate. Before you start animating, notice the name of the shape layers. For shape layer 1, 2, 3, this is pretty confusing. So first go ahead and start renaming your layers to make sense for you. So background, you can call it background or BG usually, and give it something that is significant to what you're doing. Here I press enter to rename. I will write background lower third, so I will write BGLT. For me it means something. You can write it in plain English. Then there is another shape layer here I can see is background for the place, so press enter, background place. Then this one is background date. We have 2 Tanzania, so how about if we rename this layer and call it August 2045. The last one is the background, the square, so we write background top news. Okay, if the names I'm using don't make sense to you, feel free to put whatever you like so it makes sense. But surely guys, don't leave them, shape layer 1, 2, 3, it will confuse you a lot. The design is done. The anchor points have to be adjusted later on when we are animating, but we can move on. Okay guys, we have done the layout. That's pretty fine. Let's go back to our default workspace. I like that, and I will reset it. And I will close the library because I don't like it. Fine. So now we want to animate. But guys, sometimes when you have finished your layout and you start to animate, find out like this is too small, or you want to adjust this background. So there are several ways to do that without destroying your layout and without complicating the animation. For example, let's say that this background here, the rectangle, you want to make it bigger. Let's first of all open the scale. Notice that if I start playing like this, okay, then I change the scale over here. And if I want to animate the scale, now I have a funny figure here and like, where is the 100%? I will undo this. The best way when you're working with shapes is to readjust your shapes from the shape itself. So I will go to contents, okay, rectangle 1, and I can adjust the shape just from here. So for example, you remove the chain link, of course, and you say, okay, I want 260, that's a round figure. I love round figures. And then here, let's make it 60. Then look at it. Is that fine with you? Cool, it's better. So 260, 60, let's go to this shape. And also you will modify it from the contents itself of the shape. I will remove the chain link. I put 260, press tab to move to the second one, put 60. So we adjusted the size of these shape layers. So let's start animating the shape layer here, but let's do something, fancy. So we don't need the rectangle, we open the transformation because we want to animate the shape layer, okay, not the shape itself. Let's first of all try the scale here. If let's say after 1 second, so that is 1 second, I keyframe the scale. If I come back to the beginning and I say, okay, I want to remove the chain link and use this one. Look what's happening. It's totally not interesting to open from the center. Let's change the anchor point and see how it can affect the scale. I press Ctrl and go snap it on the corner, on the left corner in the middle. Now, if I play with the scale, it's opening pretty nicely. That's quite nice. But now there is more. How about if you take the anchor point and press Ctrl and also press Shift. So, you're moving on this line here. Cool. Now, if I change the scale, and that's what's going to happen. Not only is going to scale, but also it's going to move to settle at 100%. Fine, let's put it at 0 and let's scrap through and see the animation. Pretty cool. Let's see it in normal view. Not bad at all. Of course, it's slow. You can start now because much instead of 1 second, let's start at 15 frames. It will give us, less work later on. Now for Tanzania, because we did the animation like this for the background, it's better to animate it with the opacity. I guess I press P, now I press T for opacity, and then I will keyframe it at 100%, come backward and make it 0%. Okay, let's look at the animation now. It's not very good because notice Tanzania is starting to appear when the background did not settle and start covering under all the world. But this is fine, we'll readjust the timing. Let's do the same for here. Let's press Y to get the anchor point tool. Notice the shortcut is Y. And then I'll click, press Ctrl and Shift, that is Command and Shift on the Mac. Make sure I'm over here and take it to the outside. Notice how it's snapping on the border of the composition. Let's go to the next keyframe, that is 15 frames. And we have the background here. We are going to open the scale, of course. We keyframe the scale at 100%. Come to the beginning, remove the chain link, and write 0. Okay, here you are. Let's try our animation. Not bad, it's working very fine. We go to August, and we want the opacity. I'll open T. But now I know exactly how I want to animate. So I'll put it at 0 and keyframe. So I start the animation. Press K to go to the next visible keyframe and then put opacity at 100%. Here you are. Okay, now we start animating the lower third. Well, it's gonna be pretty easy. I'll select all layers, twirl them up because I pressed something, I don't remember what it was. Select damage, forest, and the background. Open their position and go to 15 frames. Okay, and then keyframe using the stopwatch to start the animation. Come to the beginning, click and drag them out. Cool. Let's notice exactly what's happening here. They're coming in and it's pretty cool. Okay guys, fine. Let's do now the top news over here. I will select both layers. I think they are on top here. I will press S for scale and Shift R for the rotation. Cool. At 15 frames here, I'm gonna just keyframe the scale and the rotation for both of them. Come to the beginning here. Let's do something, quite nice. For the square itself, I'm gonna animate the rotation and put it at 180. Okay? But for the top news, I'm gonna do it at -180. As simple as this. And of course, I will reduce the scale to 0 in both of them. Okay? Here you are. So if you play the animation now, notice what's happening. They are rotating one, against the other. Watch it. If you want to give it more, for example, you can go for the background here and let's say you give it 360. That is a full rotation, so it jumps to full rotation over here, and notice now one is rotating much faster than the other one. Okay, let's stop here and we press N, remember, to bring the work area under to the timeline indicator. Now let's play all our animation and see, are we happy? Yes. You have created the design, you designed it very nicely, and you created the animation. Now it's time to tweak the animations and also to sequence. Let's start with Tanzania and its background. I press U to open the keyframes, as you remember. And you notice here it's looking very ugly because the text is appearing much before the background settles, and this is not good. You could now start clicking on the text layer and start moving it around. That's one way, but I wouldn't like to do that. I want to adjust them using the keyframes because I want the endpoint of both layers to be always, on the same line, just for aesthetic, and actually it's gonna be much better when I'm sequencing. I want to zoom in here a bit, so I can click on the zoom in time. Here you are. Let's take the timeline indicator to the beginning, and if you zoom in here, you notice I'm seeing more frames. Nothing else is happening. Let's look at it carefully here. I can take the first keyframe of opacity and move it to this side. The best way is to come just over here somewhere and start looking at it. Is it happening? No. Okay, so maybe it should start appearing from this here. Okay, so I'll take this keyframe and just bring it here. Here you are. Notice now it comes in the background, and then Tanzania, the word, the text layer start appearing. I'm moving frame by frame. Cool. Now the animation is too fast. Okay, I can make it longer, and let's play it and see exactly what's gonna happen. Okay, it looks good, right guys? Notice, yes, not bad at all. So I want to use exactly the same for the August here. So select the background of the date and select August, press U. So I will go over to the opacity here, bring the first keyframe here, and bring the second keyframe here. If my animation is correct, it's gonna appear just the same, otherwise I will have to tweak it, but it's appearing pretty nice here. Notice if I play it, very nice. Cool. Let's look at our layers now. Select them all, twirl up. Let's start sequencing the rest. We come to the beginning here, and let's think about it. Maybe we get top news to start with. So it appears, stays there for a second maybe, and then the place and the date will come in, then the title of the news will come in. That makes logic, right? It's not all about motion graphics and so on, but also you have to make it, very logical for the viewer. Okay, let's go with this concept. So we want news to come first. We leave it there. Then August and so on to come later. So we'll click on it and just drag it. Let's say, I don't know, 1 second or 2 seconds. Let's zoom in. We can see better here. Fine, let's go to something like this. Okay, 1 second. Okay, I think it's gonna be too long. Then after another 1 second, you bring in the lower third. Let's play and see exactly, is it nice enough? Not bad, it's okay. We need also to look at the damaged forest and so on. We don't want them to come all at the same time. So the first one is the background, then the big title, for example, then maybe the small title just a bit later. Let's see it. Not bad. Let's deselect. Okay, so I think it's quite good. Of course, you can do much better than that. Top news, guys. In Tanzania on August 2045, there has been forest flood and heavy rains, and the damage is $20 million. Let's listen. Yeah, well, it works. So it's actually not only about motion graphics. It's about you creating motion graphics that make sense, and somehow your videos are making sense to the viewer. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this was very useful animation and you can replicate it, even do much better than that. Hi guys, remember that this YouTube intro is to introduce you to animating shapes, not shape layers. So it's gonna be fun, and if you get used to it, it's gonna give you lots of power to animate your motion graphics. So let's start here. Of course, I want to tidy up from the beginning, so I'll create a new folder and let's call it YouTube. From here, I will select the folder, press Ctrl I or Command I on the Mac, and take the old times video, for example. Now, I could also create a new composition from this video because it's 1280 by 720, but yet I'm gonna uncheck it and click on import only. I will select the video, click and drag and drop it to create new composition. Here you are. So you notice the comp is 1280 by 720, 30 frames per second, just like the video. But also you notice that both have been created inside the YouTube folder, which is cool. Now I will lock this video. Now notice here I have two other compositions for the projects. I do not want them here, I want only old times. What you can do here is start clicking on the X for close, but sometimes you will have like 10 or 15 of them. You tried, you did a lot of projects, so you don't want to click on each one of them. The best way is to come to the one that you want to keep open and go to composition, all times, you click on the name, and you notice here you have close all times, you close this composition or close them all including all times. For now we want to close the others, so you can select close other comp views. Here you are. It's neat like this, you can start working. Let's start adding our shapes. So I press Q and I get a rectangle here. Let's check the fill first of all. It's 100%, that's what we want. That's fine, solid color, and the color is cool, it's not bad. That's cool like this, and we click OK. The stroke for me is not bad. You can come and choose the color that you want here. It's very cool. The stroke 5 is not bad. So click and drag to create the first shape layer, and then this is gonna be the background. Try to center it, make it beautiful. Now I want to draw the small square in the middle. For this, make sure you deselect pressing F2. Remember that, guys. And then I will click and drag to create the small square. Press Shift, so I have a square. Let's go now to the selection tool and align these. I press Shift and select the bottom one. Go to the align and align them horizontally and vertically. Let's add some text. I will go Ctrl T or Command T on the Mac. The character panel is open. 25 is too small. Let's make it 50, then we'll see. The rest is cool. Of course, guys, feel free to choose any font you want from here the way you would like. I will stick to this one because it's really practical for the course. Come over here and click to write YouTube. And then Ctrl Enter or Command Enter on the Mac on the main keyboard, and click over here and write channel. Another Ctrl Enter, and maybe I will edit and try to move it here. Okay. Now Ctrl Enter again, and then come over here and write welcome. So the welcome need to be smaller. I will go for the selection tool now because I finished adding text. I will make it, for example, 30. Now let's align the text. Put this one here. You can use the arrow keys up and down to be meticulous. The second one, let's align them together. Go to the align and align them vertically. Now let's rename them. This is the small one. I'm gonna call it square, so I know which one is which one. And the other one, I'm gonna call it background, and BG will do for now. Let's start animating now the shape layer itself. I will go to the big one, that is the background. And you notice we have been animating here the properties for the layer. So now we want to start animating whatever is inside rectangle 1 and the transform rectangle 1. So you have transformations for the layer and transformation for the shape itself. Okay, look how I explained this before. I hope you remember it. We are selecting here the shape. Look at the binding box. Let's scroll down here. You notice you have a couple of new ones. That's skew and skew axis. Come and play with them. They are very nice. You don't need for the lecture to come for you to start playing. First of all, I want to add some roundness. Okay, so I will come to roundness and put it, for example, at 50. Okay, that's a cool roundness. I will come to the scale and I want to start animating using the scale of the shape. Let's go to 1 second and something. So we let the video play, then we start the animation from 1 second. So here we are at 115. You notice this 1 second and 15. So we start the animation here. We click on the stopwatch and then we go back to 1 second. Here you are. Okay, you can just type 1 second here. And then we put the scale to 0. So we're not animating the shape layer, we're animating the shape itself. I want to show you why. Let's take the shape here, the transformation, and let's scale it up. Okay, I will remove the chain link and scale it up. Notice how the roundness is being distorted and the stroke itself is being distorted when you animate through the shape layer. The shape layer content is the shape itself, which is stroke. So when you stretch it, you don't only stretch the fill, but also you are stretching the stroke itself. So it becomes very ugly. So I will undo this and forget about the transform from here. And now you have a nice animation. Okay, you can make it even better. Let's come over here. I press K to get to this keyframe. And let's keyframe the roundness at 0. Okay, there is nothing wrong with that. And then press another K to jump to this keyframe and put back the roundness at 50. So if you notice, if you play it, it's glowing and the roundness also is glowing. What you can do here, a nice animation, is to move the roundness a bit. You can do it now. It starts at a rectangle without roundness and then the roundness is added and it's pretty cool. You notice, guys? Let's animate now the square over here. So the square is here. We go to rectangle 1 and to rectangle path 1. Let's give it a small roundness. That is 25. So from transform rectangle 1, we scroll down. We set the rotation to 45 degrees. Okay. So we're going to start from here. So let's go to 1 second again. That's 1 second. And we'll keyframe the rotation here at 45. We go to 115. Okay, and we add a rotation. Here you are. I'm gonna add a full rotation. Notice nothing has happened. It's like you don't see anything. That's because you have rotated the square a full rotation, so you can't see anything. But if you scrub through, you will notice that it's really going in. So for the small square, we are going also to do the scaling. We go to this keyframe, we go to the scale, click and make it 100%, start the animation, go backward and make it 0. Here you are. So now the animation is very simple. Now at 1 second, let's start animating the text. Very simple. We're gonna select the text and ensure the anchor point is in the middle. I'll select the 3 of them. Here you are. And press S. Let's close the square and the background. At 115, here you are. We want them at 100%. Notice the anchor point is the middle because my paragraph was centered. You can change that the way you would like. We go back to 1 second. Here you are. And then make them 0. And then if you play your animation now, not bad at all. Now let's sequence them. I will select all of them, scroll up, then press U to see only the keyframes. Let's take it up a bit. If I play the animation, I notice it's a bit slow. You notice how things are happening. Let's stop the work area end to 3 seconds. Press N. You bring the work area end to the timeline indicator. Let's play it. Okay, that's not bad, but it's a bit slow. Don't you think so, guys? Let's make it faster. I'll select these keyframes and bring them near each other. and also for the big one, okay, make it quite speedy. That's what's happening now. Now let's sequence them. We want the background to start, and just after the background we want the square, the small square, to come in, and with the small square I want the welcome. So I'm gonna click on welcome and drag it, just put it on top of the square, so I know these two, they go together. So the welcome will come with the small square. Let's look at it, and then these two, let's delay them just a bit. Okay, here you are. What do you think, guys? You like the animation? The last step is to add the motion blur. I will select one layer, press Ctrl A to select all of them, and twirl them all up. Here you are. Now I can add motion blur to all of them. I just click once and drag it down. Okay, and then if I want to see them here, I have to enable the preview within the composition. Let's press play and see exactly what's happening. Give it time to render, and here you are. Pretty nice animation. Now the purpose of this lecture and the animation is to introduce you to animate the shapes within the shape layers. So really there is no general rule here on which one to animate, the shape layer or the shape. Now if you animate the shape, you have much more control over the shape layer. So you can, for example, animate the position in the shape and then animate the position also in the shape layer. So guys, now it's your turn. You go out to After Effects and you start, creating your animation. Here I will show you how to reverse an animation. And it's a quite important strategy here to use when you are doing motion graphics. Well, think about it. If you introduce a lower title here, do you really want it till the end of the video? And you're explaining things or you're showing something on the video. You don't want that. You want it, for example, at 5 seconds after people have read it to disappear. Well, there are several ways to do that, and there is a special section about motion graphics time games where you will learn several methods. But for now, since we are in motion graphics, I will show you the keyframe method. So let's start. We don't want to mess this composition. I'm sure you need it for later on to do some modifications. So we are going to create a duplicate. I will select the old times from the project panel, and then to duplicate it, I press Ctrl D or Command D on the Mac. So now you have an identical composition, but the name has been added. This is 1, this is 2. Now we're not gonna leave it 2, we're gonna rename it and call it reverse. Okay, we double click to open it. It's very good practice to close the previous one because they are same animation. You might get confused and do work on both of them. So we decided at 5 seconds just over here, we want to reverse this animation. We want it to come out in a fancy way. Let's take the background here and press U to see the keyframes. Well, notice what we have. We have animated the roundness. If you use J to go back, it is animated here from 0 till 50. Or if you look at the previous one, from 100% reverse to 0%. Well, you can come over to 5 seconds here and decide to recreate an animation that will remove the background. For example, to fade it out, use opacity or maybe use position to take it out on the right. But it will be much nicer to replicate this animation in reverse. Let me show you. Let's select all these keyframes. Okay? Now I press Ctrl C or Command C on the Mac, and then set the time indicator wherever you want to start reversing, let's say at 5 seconds, and you press Ctrl V. But notice what happened here. Nothing has happened. It has been recreated. Actually, we just duplicated the keyframes. Fine? Now we need to reverse them. To reverse them is very easy. You can select 2 keyframes like this, right click and say Keyframe Assistant, and here you have Time Reverse Keyframes. Notice you're reversing the time of the keyframes. If you click, what happened exactly? Let's go backward. You notice that the second keyframe is now the roundness 0, and the one that is previous, it's 50. Here it was 0, 50, now it's 50, 0. Well, cool. The animation has been reversed. Notice what's happening. Instead of going from square to round, it's going from round to square. Cool. Let's do the same for the other 2 keyframes that are working with scale. Select both of them, right click, Keyframe Assistant, and time reverse keyframes. Here you are. Now if you play, there is something still wrong. It is reversing the animation, but notice how we went with the scale first, then roundness. But here we're going for the scale, then the roundness. No, we need to go with the roundness, then the scale. So I will select these two keyframes, as simple as this, and push them backward and try a bit to match them. For example, just like this. Okay, I think they're matching. Like this will be better. Cool. So now they're almost matching over here. Notice when you used the reverse, it did not move the keyframes around. It's just, reversed them. The first one became last and the last one became first. Now if you play your animation, here you are. Let's hide the other layers to see it very well. So I will hide all the top layers by putting off the eye here. This is the visibility. If I play, here you are, it opens, and then give it time to render. It goes back. Okay, now if you don't like it, of course you can come and play with it. Let's play it again on full without rendering. That's pretty cool if you like that. But for example, okay, here in our case we can remove the roundness if it's bothering you, or even speed it up a bit, so you don't see it so clearly. Good. It's up to you to do it. This method is very good. What's tedious about it, you have to go a layer at a time. For example, let's take these two layers, the square and the welcome. If I press U, I can see the keyframes here. If I copy here for the two layers, the keyframes, I press Ctrl C and come after at 5 seconds, for example, paste. Notice what happens. It's the layers that have been pasted and not the keyframes. So actually this method works a layer at a time. So you'll come over here, select the keyframes for a single layer, press Ctrl C, you copy them, Ctrl V, you pasted them, and simply right click and go keyframe assistance. Fine, but this is how I work. I'm gonna delete this example. Gonna open the keyframes for all the layers except this one is already open. Okay, let's take it up. So I will select these four, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, fine. Select these two, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, or Command C, Command V, you know that. These two, okay, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and these two, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Now, these of course are not reverse. Okay guys, so I will select all of them. Fortunately, if you right click and go keyframe assistant and time reverse keyframes, it works for all the layers. Here you are. So let's look at our animation now. If you play it, we need to give it time to render, and here you are. Well, that's pretty cool. Okay guys, that's very nice. In fact, let's play it in real time, see exactly how it's happening. Very fine. Now you can also come over here. Since the job is done, you tweak it better, you make the background speedier. For example, let's bring in the background. Let's take the keyframes here and simply move them so they can work with all the rest. Okay, notice, yep, speedier. So this is the method to reverse an animation using the keyframes, and you surely need to get used to it. You are going to copy and paste keyframes all over the place all the time. It's just common practice. Thank you very much for listening, and in the next lecture I will show you how to cut off the layers.